Hi, this is Hutch with Poker Mix-Up, and today I'm going to teach you how to play some of the most popular mix games. Now, I realize looking at all these wacky plaques can be a bit daunting, but don't worry, learning mix is easier than you think, especially after my walkthrough. In fact, most of these games are simply just mashups of poker games you already understand. So if you're wondering why all the plaques are different colors, well, the black plaques are flop games, the gold plaques are draw games like old school cowboy poker, and the silver plaques are stud games. This particular video focuses more on the traditional mixed variants, but I've got a whole other video for all these different Baduki games in the description below. We also have each of these games timestamped if you want to skip around, but you should really watch them in order because I structured this video's lineup in a way so that the learning will build on itself. Warning. Mixed game fever is really contagious because these games are way more interactive and there's considerably more playable hands that are correct to get in there and mix it up with. Also, unlike playing No Limit Hold'em in slow motion, mixed games play fast and people are actually having fun. So let's jump right into it so you don't have to buy in before you even know what's going on like I did. Okay, so Double-Board Omaha. It is a flop game, hence the black placard. It's actually a flop game times 2, hence the term double board. It is a split pot game, but unlike Omaha 8 or better, where there's a high hand and a low hand, there's just 2 high hands. It actually plays like PLO bomb pots. So when people play pot limit Omaha, oftentimes when the dealer changes, they'll run 2 flops and they'll play pot limit. This game is limit. Just like PLO, you deal 4 cards down to each player. Then you're going to spread 2 flops after there's a round of betting. Then you're going to burn, do 2 turns, betting, burn 2 rivers, and the high winner on each hand gets a share of the pot. So let's take a look at a hand together. All right, so we're going to pick up as if we had already dealt everybody their 4 cards. Pre-flop betting ensued, and now I did a burn and both flops. It's worth noting, too, that I don't burn after each flop. I just do 1 burn for both flops. Same for turn and river. A little sloppy there. It's also worth noting that even though I'm dealing from the wrong side, you call the flop farthest away from the dealer the top flop. So for now, we'll just say the one you're looking at, Ace, King, 4, that would be the top flop, and the bottom would be the bottom. So people would say I have something on top and something else on bottom. Here's the turn card. It changes the board dynamics a lot. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop the action, and I'm going to bring over the 3 hands that are involved just to show the dynamics. So we actually have pocket aces. For a set of aces on the top board and a nasty little wheel draw on the bottom board with that ace 3. We also have a double wrap, monster wrap, hearts, plus the queen jack 10 for basically a 3-way straight, and then clubs and the 8 queen for flush draw on the bottom. So just a monster wrap. And then this guy has a set of 8s on the bottom, but also with that 7 of hearts, he picked up a backdoor straight wrap. And let's see, we gather in all the bets. It's important that you stack as you're going so you don't waste a lot of time each hand, or at least do some amount of stacking before the river. And we do the river. Ooh, nasty little card. And yeah, things have changed quite a bit. So you drop the deck, and we're assuming more betting ensues, but we can see exactly what happened here. It's not pretty for those pocket aces. They made a wheel on the bottom flop, but that is no good because clubs is beating it. And as far as the top board, that 6 came in for that little inside straight wrap that he backdoored. Didn't win with the pocket 8s on the bottom, but picked up a nasty little straight wrap. So it's a split pot game. Half the money goes there. The other half goes there. Let's change gears to Ace to 5 triple draw lowball. It's a draw game, actually a triple draw game as it states in its name. And this is important because a lot of the most popular mixed games are triple draw format. And this is probably the simplest form of triple draw because there's only 1 winner. It's low only, hence the term lowball, and you can draw up to 5 cards up to 3 times. That is encouraged, by the way. You will always get invited back to a mixed game if you draw 5. And ace is low And the pictures are in rank, so they don't equal 10 like a jack beats a queen. People aren't often drawing to jacks or queens, but at the end, if two people draw, that can come into play. Ace 2, 3, 4, 5, the wheel as it's known is the nut, and then the next best hand is Ace 2, 3, 4, 6, otherwise known as number 2 for the second best low. Then Ace 2, 3, 5, 6, Ace 2, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Straights and flushes are okay, and what I mean by that is they don't hurt you. They don't help you, they don't hurt you. We're just really going for low rank of all cards. So let's get into a hand. So we're simulating here that the pre-flop action has already happened, meaning I've given everybody their original 5 cards and they've bet, and now we're doing draws. That person looks like they're drawing 3, this person 2, and this person 1. And it's worth noting that the proper way to deal cards on the draw is not to pitch, but to slap them down and then slide them. And that way you don't have any paint flashing. As long as you can do it quickly. This is simulating the turn, right? Looks like we did 2, 1, 1. And you always know what draw you're on by the amount of burn. So that was the second draw. I'm gathering the chips. This is the third draw, or the river. They actually call it the river. Looks like I pitched it that time. 1 and pat. Since all 3 draws are out, I'm gathering all the bets. I'm dropping the deck. And now we're going to do a showdown. So what we have here is we have a straight 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, we have a smooth 7. Ace 2, 3, 4, 7. The smoothest of 7s. It's a little blurry there, but that's Ace 3, 5, 6, 7, which is a little bit of a rough 7. And they actually do call it a rough 7. And so what wins? Well, pretty obviously you count from the top down. And so, 2 people would go 7. And if you have the rough 7 there and you say, I have a 7, and then somebody says 7 what? That's not really a good question if you're holding Ace 3, 5, 6, 7. There are rougher 7s. You could have a straight 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But when your 7 goes 7, 6, 5, it's a pretty rough 7. Versus the smooth 7 under it, Ace 2, 3, 4, 7, you can't have a better 7. So when you say smooth 7 very proudly and somebody else says 6, even though that's the roughest 6 or the worst 6, a 6 is still a 6. And again, as we noted beforehand, the straight doesn't count against you. And there's no bonus points for it, not in this game, but this is a great segue towards Archie. So Archie is one of the most popular mixed games with people who like these crazy carnival-esque games. But it seems like the old school kind of horse-ish mixed game players don't really care for it. And that's because it's a lot of action. There's probably the least amount of information available. And it's because, similar to Triple Draw Lowball, it is a draw game, but it's not low only. It's split pot between the high and the low hand. So the low part is just like Ace to 5 Triple Draw Lowball, except for you need a qualifier. You need to make 8 or lower to make the low. Similar to Omaha 8 or better, or Stud 8 or better. You guys are used to needing to qualify with an 8 or lower. But what's interesting is to qualify for high, usually you don't need to qualify. Like with Stud 8 or better Omaha, I have Ace King, I have Ace Queen, whatever it is. You don't qualify for a high hand unless you have 6s or better. Those are the rules I like. Some mixed game players play 9s or better for high, and they like this because they don't want somebody to miss a low draw and pair their 6s or pair their 7s or 8s and then be able to call off and win half the pot. I actually like it. I think it adds complexity to the game. If somebody wants to call off with a miss low, so be it. I think that stimulates action. And also with the 9s or better, if somebody bluff bets, there's no qualifier, and somebody else calls with no qualifier, you just chop the pot. But with 6s or better, if there's a bet and a call, whoever actually has the highest hand at that point, like Ace 6 or Ace 7, that would win the pot. So let's get it. Oh, and before we do, I once thought that this game was named after Archie the Greek, Archie Karras, the famous craps player that ran a very small 2-figure stake into whatever it was, 8 figures. But I was told, no, that's not the case. It's this. There was a gentleman named Archie in Phoenix with that mixed game crew that loved this game, and they named it after him. And that was verified for me a couple times over. So let's get into a hand of Archie. So again, we're assuming everybody already bet with the pre-flop betting. And even though it's a draw game, people do refer to this as the flop, the first draw. And again, it's just really hard to gather information because sure, if they're drawing 3, you can put them on a high and a pair. But if they're drawing 1, are they drawing low? Are they drawing to a straight or a flush? Are they drawing to 2 pair? Maybe if they're betting or raising, you can put them on 2 pair. But other than that, it's very, very tough. So here we are on the river. Right? It looks like we have draw one, and Pat. In a 3-way pot, it's likely to be split, so stacking the chips is good. Looks like we had a draw to a straight flush, a low straight flush, 3, 4, 5, 6 of spades. Straight 6 would be nice here because you'd have a 6 low and a 6 high straight. You could have a 6 high straight flush with the deuce of spades. Instead, he got a 6. Just enough to call. Maybe took a little too much heat to call, but so be it. Needless to say, he's going to lose to the kings and jacks 2 pair. Kicker doesn't really matter. This isn't Hold'em or Omaha where there's a shared card. So a high 2 pair is nice. And we also have, looks like what was a draw to a wheel, ended up making an 8. Staying pat on the end. You just got to kind of buckle up and hope that your smooth 8 is good. It's not the smoothest of 8, but 8-5 is pretty darn good. Obviously, the pair of 6s is no good, so we're going to chop up the pot, and that is Archie. Triple draw, high-low split. Enough of this high-low stuff. Let's talk about another one of those high split pot games, Drawmaha. And it is a flop variant. And as the name would suggest, Drawmaha isn't so much like drama for the play, even though there can be a lot of drama with Drawmaha. It's draw, like 5-card draw, Maha for Omaha. And that's really what it is. It's a cross between 5-card draw and Omaha. So what happens is the dealer deals out 5 cards to everybody, and then you bet on your best 5-card draw hand. But not so fast. After that, there's going to be an Omaha flop, in which case you bet again. In limit, it's another small bet, the flop bet. And before you rip off a turn card, before burning and turning, every player then declares how many cards they want to draw. So when you're drawing cards, you can draw it not only to improve your draw hand, your 5-card draw hand, because you only get 1 draw, but it can also improve your Omaha hand. Let's say you have only 1 spade and now you pick up the ace of spades. Voila, you have the nut flush draw. Who knows? But let's check out a Drawmaha hand. So we're simulating as if everybody's gotten their 5 cards down and are betting pre-flop. And since there's no board yet, you can at least gauge who likes their 5-card draw hand. Now, after the flop comes, another small round of betting ensues. And if somebody different shows strength, then it's most likely because they like their Omaha hand. Now, what happens between the flop and the turn is unique to the Drawmaha variant, and it's really important. So usually after the flop betting is complete, the dealer will just immediately slap down a burn card and then a turn card, but you have to slow them down if they're new to mixed games. Why? Well, there's 1 drawing round between the flop and the turn, meaning everybody gets to exchange some cards. And in addition to declaring how many cards they want, the players actually have to set them down on the table. Otherwise, if you did the turn card first, you may change your mind on which cards you want to put down, right? So discards go down first, and then the turn goes next before exchanging the old discards for new cards. And that is so at least the turn card never changes regardless of how many different cards the various players draw. After a round of big betting, after this turn card comes the river, which will have another round of big betting and then a showdown. So 3 queens is obviously a very strong draw hand. It's a high trips. If you have a low trips, it's always heartbreaking when somebody makes higher, and people do make straights and flushes and fill up. So although these things are more rare in a single draw game, and all Drawmaha games are a single draw game compared to like a triple draw Archie, it does happen. These three queens had a jack of clubs with it, so they had a straight flush draw. They actually turned the nut straight, but unfortunately a pair hit the river, so the hand above theirs, the 10s and 7s, 10s flopped a set. They were dead on the turn to the queen high straight, and thankfully the 9 paired to give them 10s full. And even though 2 pair is a very strong draw hand in Drawmaha, 3 queens is better. Aces, a lot of times aces are good enough to win in Drawmaha. A lot of times kings are. It just depends. But in this case, aces fell short. They did have the nut flush draw with ace king of clubs. There was a diamond draw on the Omaha board. And it looks like they made diamonds. So just a crying call. And obviously they get nothing. So before we talk about Drawmaha high-low, yes, there is such a thing, well, several things, but before we talk about the most popular version of Drawmaha, deuce to 7, we first have to talk about deuce to 7 triple draw. So similar to ace to 5, it is a draw game. There's only one winner. It's just low only. But in this case, compared to ace to 5, ace is high and pictures are still in rank. A jack beats a queen beats a king, and so on. Straights and flushes are bad. You do not want to make straights and flushes. Like if you make a straight, then you can't even beat 2 pair, much less if somebody pairs up. You can't beat 3 of a kind. Same thing with the flush. You can make the nuts, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 in deuce to 7 because it doesn't make a straight. But if you make 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 in diamonds, you can't even beat a straight. You can't even beat 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the second nut is 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and so on. Similar to ace to 5, people declare their hands usually from the top down. They just say 8, 7, 9, and there's that horrible question, 8 what? And hopefully it's smooth. Before we look at specific hands in deuce to 7, let's jump back and look at that ace to 5 example. If you remember, these were the finishing hands in ace to 5. Now let's remove the ace to 5 plaque and look at these same hands through the lens of deuce to 7. So even though all of these may be decent hands in ace to 5 triple draw, a straight 6 on the bottom, a smooth 7 in the middle, and a rough 7 up top, they're all very bad hands in deuce to 7. A straight 6 is just that. It's a straight. So you can't even beat somebody who paired their 7s or their 8s. The smooth 7 in the middle is actually an ace high. So you can't even beat a king if there are not any draws left. And this rough 7 up here is getting close to even being unplayable, even if there are draws left. And we'll talk about why in just a moment, because as you can see, there are only 2 burn cards, meaning there's only been 2 draws and therefore 1 left. So let's go ahead and ditch this 6 down here. And obviously the other 2 hands ditch their aces. Well, if the 2, 3, 4, 5 catches another 6, it's obviously no good, but a 7 is the nuts. And even catching an 8 gets you number 5, meaning there are only 4 variations of 7s that beat this hand. And with everyone drawing, a smooth 9 may be good enough for the win on the end. However, if players are packed going into that last draw, you'll often be, but not always, looking at least some kind of an 8 once you show down. So what about this 2, 3, 4, 7? Now, this draw is actually better than the 2, 3, 4, 5 below because instead of only 1 out to a 7, you actually have 2 outs. The 5 for the nuts or the 6 for number 2, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. And you can still catch an 8 for an 8, 7 perfect, which often beats other made 8s, even if they were packed going in the last draw. Now, the reason this top hand is close to being unplayable is because you can only catch a deuce to make a 7, and it's not even the nuts or the second nuts. A 4 makes you a straight, and the 8 makes you the roughest 8 there is. So basically, you can only beat the smooth 9 down below. Let me just say, as we finish up deuce to 7, if you're going to play mixed games, you have to get comfortable with this whole concept of deuce to 7 lowball, which is really just the opposite of high poker. And that's because there are several other variants that include deuce to 7 in some way, shape, or form, like deuce to 7 Drawmaha. So now that you get the hang of triple draw deuce of 7, let's bring it back to Drawmaha deuce of 7. Another flop variant similar to Drawmaha high. It is split pot, but not high hand. High hand, it's a high flop, but low draw. You're going for low in your hand, high on the Omaha board, which produces a very cool effect because most Omaha games, they're binary. They're either very high or very low. Like 08, Omaha 8 or better, everybody's going for ace deuce and backing into a high, versus with PLO, everybody's like super high. And Drawmaha deuce is one of the few games where actually like the middle is the nuts most often. Like deuce to 7 hands in general tend to produce middling kind of hands. And so there's going to be a lot of action between the cards of like 5 to jack, right? There's just a lot of stuff happening there when you get those flops. So kind of interesting. Similar to Drawmaha high, everybody's going to bet on the deuce to 7 hand in their hand first before there's a flop. Then you're going to bet on the Omaha high flop with the low cards, hopefully low cards in your hand. And again, you're going to draw between the flop and the turn. You have to slow that dealer down because they're just kind of primed once they get those bets to rip off a turn card. If they do, you're going to have to back that up and reshuffle it back in because people didn't declare their discards, and that's going to change their decision. So you have to slow that dealer down. So let's look at a hand from the flop onward and see how people are behaving as they discard and improve on their deuce of 7 hand and the Omaha hand. So as we discussed, the 5-10 jack flop is going to produce some fireworks, especially with suited diamonds out there. And just as we're seeing, we have a made queen low, but especially with the open-ended straight draw and the 10-7 of diamonds for the flush draw, this guy is all over it. Now, notice they would have a bigger wrap if they kept the queen, but that would actually weaken their low hand. So he's going to go ahead and draw. And that's one of the really interesting things about this game is you would break a made hand. A queen can win sometimes, but when there's 2 people left to act behind you and you don't even know if they're drawing yet, you have to draw to the smoother 10. And he's still got a lot of things working for him. If we look at the smooth jack, he could keep 2 pair jacks and 5s, which a lot of people would. You don't get the opportunity to draw to a 7 in single draw Drawmaha that often. So this guy is going to choose to ditch the jack and to draw to the smoother hand. Either way is probably correct, especially if that person's drawing in front of you. The last thing you want, though, is to go ahead and stay pat with the jack and have that person stay pat behind you. But you never know. Maybe they have jack 10 2 pair and they're just whole buckling up with 2 pair and the jack 10 low. You just never know. But if 2 people have drawn in front of you, maybe this person would keep the jacks and 5 2 pair and the jack 7 low and just hope for the best. The last hand, again, has another open-ended, has 8-9. But notice in their hand, they have a gut shot. A 7 makes them a gut shot in their hand. They don't want to make the straight there because, again, that is not a low hand. Even though 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 would be a low in ace to 5 low ball, in deuce to 7 it is not. It is a straight to the 9, and it cannot even beat 3 of a kind in the low department. So ideally, he gets a 7 on the turn to give him the nut straight in the Omaha and catches a lower card. And remember, ace is not a low card. So all of those get ditched. Let's see the turn. So we do the turn first, so it never changes. And then we go ahead and produce the draws. We flip them over one by one, and we see that everybody kind of made a little something with this. So our 10-9 draw ended up making a straight with the 7-9. If you remember, he had the queen. He would have the nut straight to the queen, but now he still has a straight, the second nut straight, and he's got a good low. The person drawing to the smooth 7, not that smooth as a 7, but a 7's a 7 in single draw, got a different jack. So he's got the smooth jack. Jack 7 is pretty darn smooth. And he's got the 2 pair jacks and 5. Probably not loving either side of his hands. But that's the thing about Drawmaha deuce. He might just find a call to hope to win half somewhere. And Up top, they did not hit that gut shot for the 7 in their hand. They made Deuce. That's the best card they can catch on the low side, so they have a 9-8 low. So they're going to go ahead and win the low, and let's see what comes off on the river. So that 5 of clubs is an action card. The made 9-8 low up top backed into a runner full house, 5 full of 8s. Our 10-9 low down below that had the straight on the turn improved to a 9 high flush. We know that's no good. It does beat the 7 high flush above him. And what's interesting is that character who was drawing to the 7 low was probably disappointed by the jack that he caught for the low side, but 5 full of jacks is actually going to earn the high side. And this happens a lot with Drawmaha Deuce of 7, since the absolute nuts are hardly ever out there for the low side, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and often not for the high side, since people aren't drawing often to the ace high flushes or top fulls with pairs in their hands because they're going low. You have all these middling hands battling it out for half the pot, hoping to scoop, and it makes for a very exciting game. All right, let's talk about Super Stud 8 or better. And as you've probably guessed, it is a stud game. It's also a split pot game, meaning that there's always a high hand and there's often a low hand predicated on that 8 or better at the end of its name. What that means is at the end of the hand, when you turn over your 7 cards, as long as 5 of them are lower than 8 and unpaired, then you qualify for half the pot with a low hand. And if you're used to playing Omaha 8 or better or stud 8 or better, you already get that whole 8 or better thing. Really, this game is exactly the same as stud 8 or better, except for a couple little idiosyncrasies. One of them being that instead of dealing 2 down cards, then 1 up card, you actually deal 4 down cards and then 1 up card. And for those of you that are dealing this at home, buttons don't matter. You always deal stud clockwise, starting with whoever's to the left of the dealer on every street. Once you get your 4 down and 1 up, you're going to discard your worst 2 cards, almost like a pineapple game. Your worst 2 cards, you're just going to pitch them into the muck, and you don't need to wait your turn. You don't need to wait for betting to complete. You just look at them, throw those away at any time to speed up the game. Now, the only other thing that makes this different from normal stud 8 is the fact that instead of the low card showing bringing in the pot on 3rd Street for either 1 chip or 4 chip, whoever has the high card brings it in for either 1 chip or 4 chips. Now, since it is a stud high-low game and everybody starts with 4 cards, this is really just meant to create more action. And once you deal 4th Street, it's really the exact same thing as stud 8 or better. So we're not going to deal an entire handout, but we are going to deal the beginning just to understand the flow of this super stud format, because it does come into play with other mixed games. So all stud game starts with an ante. Usually it's 1 chip. You throw it out there and then start pitching the cards to the left. You can see with 3 cards, if it's a full game, sometimes it's better just to do 3 down, 1 up, so you don't have to reshuffle towards the end. Otherwise, if it's short, 4 down, 1 up is great. Again, high card brings it in, and then the action goes. So we're just going to look at this person's 2 cards. They're going to throw away I think they're just going to keep a king and another high card. This is a decision. You know, do you keep the aces with the suit of 5, or do you go for ace deuce 3? You know, you're holding a couple of blockers to a low hand. There's not a lot of people behind you. This person's going with the aces. This person's drawing to a low. Ooh, 4, 5, 7 of spades. Why not? So they're going to play for the low straight flush draw. 9 is really the worst card in Super Stud. You have a pair here, but they're not going to keep it. They're just going to ditch it. And since it's raised, the king is also going to ditch it. And so this becomes a heads up affair. Both players catch good. This is a 3 chip, 6 chip game, so you can see that's a small betting round. Again, after this, it really just goes to normal stud, like you'd see after 4th Street. So with 4th Street, the betting that goes on here is another 3-chip betting round, or 4-chip if you're playing 2040 or 8160 or whatever. Then 5th, 6th, and 7th Street are all big betting rounds. So they're all double the bet. So you actually get an extra big betting round than you do with flop games. I think you guys get the point. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And furthermore, hopefully you have a solid foundation of how the structure of mixed games work and the different variants. So you understand how double board works. You understand the different Drawmahas and the uniqueness of that flop variant. You've seen lots of triple draw games and a super stud game where you're pitching cards. Now, what you didn't get and what we're going to cover next time is all the Badugi games. So not just regular Badugi triple draw, but Badesi, Badusi, Super Razdusi, and Drawmaha Badugi. And once you get those, you will have all bases covered to where you will have confidence sitting down in almost any kind of mixed game you can think of. See you next time.